Imagine possessing a mind so brilliant, you can grasp complex concepts in mere moments. But what if that same brilliance is used to create a force of unimaginable destruction? Today, we are exploring the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who both ignited a new era and wrestled with its catastrophic consequences. As Julius Robert Oppenheimer witnessed the successful detonation of the world's first nuclear weapon, he was haunted by its implications. His words, "I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, 'Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds,' reflected his deep concerns." Oppenheimer, a man of many talents, who spoke 8 languages and wrote poetry, will forever be remembered as the father of the atomic bomb. The man who gave humanity the power to destroy itself was tormented by his creation. When people first met J. Robert Oppenheimer, they were immediately struck by his intellect. A former colleague once said, "The man was unbelievable. He always gave you the right answer before you formulated the question." Knowledge came easy to Oppenheimer. He learned Dutch in 6 weeks just to give a lecture during a visit to the Netherlands. Born in New York on April 22, 1904, he was the elder son of German Jewish immigrants. His father, Julius, was a textile importer who became very wealthy, and his mother was a painter whose family had been in New York for generations. He was raised in Manhattan on the Upper West Side, in an apartment adorned with paintings by famous artists, including Van Gogh. After attending an elite private school in New York City, he went on to Harvard in 1922, intending to become a chemist but leaving with a passion for physics. Oppenheimer was drawn to experimental physics after taking a thermodynamics course at Harvard. He also studied philosophy, Greek, and French literature. He spent his days living in the library, raiding the place intellectually, as he put it. He enrolled at Harvard a year late due to suffering from colitis, an inflammatory bowel disease, but made up for it by graduating in 3 years instead of 4. He then crossed the pond to the University of Cambridge to conduct research at the Cavendish Laboratory for Experimental Physics. However, he was clumsy in the lab and realized his forte was in theoretical physics rather than experimental work. The stress of graduate work threw him into depression, making him emotionally unstable. He even confessed to lossing an apple with harmful chemicals in an attempt to poison his tutor with whom he didn't get along. Fortunately, the tutor didn't eat the apple. Oppenheimer left Cambridge to continue his studies at one of the centers of theoretical physics in Europe, the University of Gttingen in Germany. He produced good work and held his own despite his youth, earning his Ph.D. at 23. Returning to the U.S., he worked as a research fellow at Harvard and then the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. He was so absorbed in his studies that he often ignored the real world. However, the rise of fascism in Europe in the 1930s caught his attention. Oppenheimer agreed with Einstein that German scientists could develop a nuclear weapon, and believed Hitler would use it. America watched fearfully as the Nazis invaded Poland in 1939. In 1942, Oppenheimer was selected to direct the Manhattan Project, a top-secret U.S. Army project to develop the atomic bomb. He brought together the best minds in physics, eventually managing more than 3,000 people. He chose Los Alamos, New Mexico, as the primary production facility because of its natural beauty, which he had fallen in love with as a teen during his gap year recovering from ill health. Washington poured massive amounts of money into the project, with the initial $6,000 budget ballooning to $2 billion by 1945. Before leading the Manhattan Project, Oppenheimer taught physics at both Caltech and the University of California, Berkeley, where he built the physics program into a hub for physics research in America. He had already been working on nuclear fission, the powerful release of energy caused by splitting an atom. Uranium-235, a highly unstable and fissionable isotope, was a key element in this process. When struck by a neutron, it becomes U-236, which is so unstable that it splits into krypton and barium, releasing 3 more neutrons and causing a chain reaction, a huge explosion similar to a bowling ball striking pins that hit other pins. Research also showed that plutonium-239 would be highly fissionable. However, as a non-naturally occurring element, it had to be manufactured. Reactors in southeastern Washington state were built to produce plutonium. On July 16, 1945, scientists detonated a plutonium bomb over Alamogordo, New Mexico. The world would never be the same. A few people laughed, a few cried, but most were silent. Never before had humanity possessed a weapon that threatened global civilization. The successful test meant the atomic bomb was ready for military use. The following month, the U.S. dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. On August 6, 1945, the most powerful weapon in the world devastated Hiroshima, killing 140,000 people. Thousands more died in pain from radiation poisoning in the following months and years. 3 days later, another bomb fell on Nagasaki, killing 74,000 people with equally devastating effects. Japanese Emperor Hirohito decried the power of a new and most cruel bomb. Japan surrendered 6 days later, abruptly ending World War II. Oppenheimer initially expressed guilt over his creation, stating that the weapon had dramatized so mercilessly the inhumanity and evil of modern war. He continued, in some sort of crude sense, which no vulgarity, no humor, no overstatement can quite extinguish, the physicists have known sin. And this is a knowledge which they cannot lose. Yet a decade later, he distanced himself from personal responsibility, placing the onus on governments rather than scientists. After the war, Oppenheimer became a key advisor on U.S. atomic policy, heading the Principal Advisory Committee of the Atomic Energy Commission, the successor to the Manhattan Project. This civilian agency controlled nuclear research and weapon development. He even had a desk in the president's executive offices across from the White House. However, in December 1953, President Dwight Eisenhower ordered a blank wall be placed between Oppenheimer and any secret data, suspecting him of being a communist spy. Oppenheimer argued he was never interested in politics or economics and had been unaware of the 1929 stock market crash until after the fact. However, he connected with left-leaning groups in the 30s and 40s after falling for Jean Tatlock, a Stanford psychology grad student and Communist Party member. In 1936, friends introduced Oppenheimer to Tatlock, who was heavily involved in politics. Oppenheimer inherited hundreds of thousands of dollars after his father's death in the 30s and began supporting left-wing efforts such as the Loyalists in the Spanish Civil War. They had a passionate relationship, came close to marriage, but ultimately broke up. He married Kitty Puening in 1940, a Berkeley student and former Communist Party member. They had 2 children together. He continued to see Tatlock, spending a night with her, in 1943 while working on the secret bomb project. Tatlock confessed her enduring love for him, but he never saw her again. She struggled with her sexuality and depression, eventually taking her own life in 1944. Tatlock's love for the English poet John Donne likely inspired Oppenheimer to name the first atomic bomb test, Trinity, after Donne's sonnet about a 3-person god. Despite his known communist affiliations, they didn't prevent his appointment to lead the Manhattan Project. The FBI found no reason to revoke his security clearance in 1944. However, the Cold War brought renewed scrutiny. The Soviet Union's successful nuclear test in 1949, earlier than expected, raised suspicions. William Liscombe Borden, executive director of the United States Congress Joint Committee on Atomic Energy, sent a letter to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, suggesting Oppenheimer was a Soviet agent, but without solid evidence. Borden was close to Lewis Strauss, the Atomic Energy Commission chairman, who hated Oppenheimer, having been humiliated by him at a congressional hearing. In 1954, Oppenheimer faced a tribunal to explain his communist affiliations. The closed-door hearing lasted 4 weeks. Oppenheimer maintained that his left-wing connections provided companionship, not radicalization. He was never a Communist Party member. 3 board members heard his case, and by a vote of 2 to 1, they stripped him of his security clearance. Strauss, his adversary, delivered the verdict, leaving Oppenheimer humiliated and powerless. The U.S. government no longer trusted its top atomic physicist, outraging his peers. Einstein quipped that AEC stood for Atomic Extermination Conspiracy, while Wernher von Braun noted that in England, Oppenheimer would have been knighted. Yet, Hungarian physicist Edward Teller, who supported the hydrogen bomb, testified against him, saying he would feel more secure if public matters were in other hands. Teller's testimony led to his ostracism by the scientific community for years. Declassified documents later cleared Oppenheimer of disloyalty, with the U.S. Department of Energy concluding that his lack of enthusiasm for the hydrogen bomb wasn't linked to disloyalty. Oppenheimer saw the hydrogen bomb as unnecessary and immoral, fearing its use against civilians. He had used his position on the Atomic Energy Commission to lobby for international control of nuclear weapons to prevent a nuclear arms race with the Soviet Union. After losing his clearance, he settled in Princeton, New Jersey, running the Institute for Advanced Study. He lived quietly until President Kennedy invited him to a 1962 White House dinner for Nobel Prize winners, though he never won the prize himself. He declined a retrial for his security clearance, but accepted the Fermi Award in 1963. Oppenheimer humbly thanked the president for his kindness. Diagnosed with throat cancer in 1965, Oppenheimer died in 1967 at 62. His ashes were scattered at his home in the U.S. Virgin Islands, now known as Oppenheimer Beach. The 20th century brought us nuclear weapons, and the threat feels closer than ever. Russia talks tough about using them, and North Korea's missile tests are terrifying. A famous doomsday clock is ticking louder, reminding us we're dangerously close to destroying our world. Back in the Cold War, we were 7 minutes away from midnight. Now, it's just 100 seconds. Inspired by Oppenheimer's story, boost your brainpower with Brilliant. Learn math, science, and coding in a fun way.
If you found this exploration into the atomic bomb inventory insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tech Titans for more interesting videos. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on the impact of Oppenheimer's work and what topics you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching.